Hi, my name is Michael J. Schmidt, and I'm giving this presentation on behalf of COML 598 International and Intercultural Communications here at Gonzaga University. In the presentation to follow, we will be reviewing the audience, understanding the power of coming together, going over the purpose of the presentation, reviewing the impact of employee resource groups and the benefits of adding additional employee resource groups, then understanding the return on investment and the measurement of success, and finally, studying the opportunity to transform employee resource groups into a physical space called the Mindful Laboratory. Power relations permeate communications in organizations. Dominant groups rely on various ideologies to maintain and reproduce relations of power, often through consent of non-dominant groups. However, non-dominant groups and their allies often strive to develop more equitable realities. Although power processes can exclude and oppress people, they can also enable and empower them. Social identity matters for members of non-dominant and dominant groups. First, I'd like to communicate that the goal of this presentation is to not cause you to feel shame or defensive. By learning about other social identity groups that work within the organization, the knowledge can benefit members of non-dominant and dominant team members. Becoming more informed can help identify internalized oppression or internalized dominance. It supports advocacy of more inclusive, accurate, and diverse information and representation of non-dominant groups in the organization. ERGs are essential in fostering belonging and advancing potential, and they need support to be able to continue to do that. Navigating a system where some voices are often trivialized or go unheard altogether requires ERG leaders and members to be resourceful and project their asks more strategically. Simply waiting for organizations to take that initiative may translate into a very long wait. It is better to push and be heard than to not be heard at all, which is why we are here today. Diversity to us is difference in experience, mindset, cultural background, age, gender, company culture, and even personality. If we hired people with only one personality type, how would we then be able to look out for all opportunities? Companies managed by diverse teams in terms of ethnicity, culture, and gender have a 33% higher chance of outperforming companies managed by conformable teams. Virtually everyone acknowledges that prejudice is both wrong and destructive. Yet as we look closely, we are still surrounded by it and very likely to find ourselves guilty of perpetrating it in some form or another. Everyone stereotypes, we simply cannot help it. Cultural differences provide a fertile field for stereotypes because these differences call out for some explanation. What is important is not eliminating stereotypes, but recognizing them for what they are and managing them in productive ways. Stereotypes are categories that grow out of our desire to understand differences that we perceive in others. The roles of ERGs continue to evolve. The first way in which they're doing so is by fostering inclusion, which we define as the extent to which an organization's systems and people promote a welcoming and fair environment for all employees. Second, they improve diversity. ERGs help with recruiting efforts by participating in talent attraction. And third, they promote external impact by connecting their members to colleagues and parts of the business looking to embed diversity in operations and core strategy. ERGs drive social impact. As a best practice, effective ERGs focus on strategic alignment and a distinct purpose. They do so by clearly stating their goal and mission and how it ties directly back into the company's DEI strategy. They develop a charter that details the ERG's strategic objectives and then draft annual plans that outline those initiatives to drive the strategic plan. Then they define who is accountable for the initiatives and how ERG members support them. Then they establish metrics to assess the impact of the initiatives and programs by soliciting feedback and analyzing those metrics, and then making adjustments to the ERG goals and initiatives as needed. Effective companies create a centrally aligned approach to allocating ERG funding and leadership support. As a best practice, ERG leaders take advantage of strong connections within their organization to get access to the right people and funding required to sharply execute their initiatives. Leaders should view ERG participation and involvement as net benefits for both the employees themselves and for the company as a whole. Now that we better understand the importance of ERGs, I'd like the organization to consider adding 4 additional ERGs, which include the Women's Network, LGBTQIA+, diverse identities, and indigenous cultures. Fortunately, the organization currently has a Black and African American ERG. Race and gender matter because members of minoritized groups continue to experience widespread prejudice and discrimination. In fact, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, 62% of hate crimes were targeted because of the offender's bias towards race, ethnicity, and ancestry. Race is a social construction steeped in power dynamics. Institutions enact this racism through blatant behaviors, such as specifically unintentionally excluding people of color from employee resources, mentorship, and promotions. Some white people are not conscious of race. As members of the racially privileged group in the United States, some white people take their identity as the hidden standard in the United States. When an identity is the norm, it is basically invisible. Gender is an ongoing and communicative accomplishment of everyday organizational life, and such as it embodies issues of control, resistance, and transformation. Gender matters across the employment lifecycle, from recruitment through the interview, the hiring process, to tenure, and then eventual departure. Women of all races and Black men are rapidly becoming the poorest of poor. Organizational roles and relationships require us to act and interact based on gender expectations. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, asexual, plus. Sexuality matters because it is a fundamental aspect of everyone's identity and experiences. Employees of non-dominant sexual identity groups experience more negative life circumstances than do dominant group members. In 1964, U.S. Civil Rights Act protects LGBTQIA+ employees from discrimination. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, reports of anti-gay hate crimes decreased slightly in 2020, but crimes based on bias against transgender and gender nonconforming people continues to increase. Intersectionality, a concept that acknowledges complex, compounded consequences of belonging to more than one non-dominated group. Intersectionality provides profound perspective on social identity. Intersectional perspectives can reveal on a given issue and between separate identity groups perspectives of both privilege and victimhood, and thereby create a connection around shared experiences of discrimination, marginalization, and privilege. Moving forward, intersectionality is likely to become a more significant topic for ERGs represented through diverse identities. Recent US consensus data show a 276% increase in people who self-identify as multiracial. In 1924, 100 years ago, Native Americans, including Alaska Natives, were granted citizenship. In 1989, some US states and cities have honored Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October to honor the cultures and histories of the Native American people. In 2022, just 2 years ago, 14 states, the District of Columbia, and over 130 cities celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. An inclusive approach that incorporates the influences, practices, and values of diverse cultures in a respectful and productive manner. Operating in Alaska, it is important to include an ERG of and for Indigenous cultures to represent multicultural leadership. ERGs can help participants not only network with leaders, but also display their skills. By including additional ERGs, we can more effectively track and tie ERG participation to promotion to determine if participation creates the desired effect on DEI leadership goals. While having ERGs can drastically improve our organization's ability to attract, retain, engage, and develop employees, we'll also get the most benefit from these programs when they're structured and trackable. Surveys and feedback mechanisms can be used to measure how satisfied members are with the ERG and its activities. This metric is important because it can help HR leaders understand whether the ERG is meeting its employees' needs and whether there are opportunities for improvement. A high level of employee satisfaction with the ERG can also contribute to improved engagement and retention rates. Now I'd like to introduce the Mindful Laboratory, a place for culture, connection, and creation. The Mindful Laboratory will have gender-inclusive, individual-use restrooms. It will provide training and resources for all employees on a variety of social identities, support inclusive counseling, and care for victims of social violence and racism. In today's environment, it is important to have a centrally located place at the business's headquarters where ERGs and employees can come together to create a more inclusive culture, connect with one another, and create a positive, more inclusive work environment for everyone. McKinsey research found that ERG leaders who have strong ties to executives are better able to obtain resources and funding than those with weak ties. Speaking to allies and sponsors you can count on for support is absolutely vital. So my ask to you is that you consider the investment in the 4 additional ERGs, which include the Women Network, LGBTQIA+, diverse identities, and Indigenous cultures. These will help develop and disseminate classifications and hierarchies of race, gender, sexuality, class, and other social identities. I'd like to thank you for your time today and listening to my presentation and considering the opportunity for additional ERGs within the organization. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me utilizing my contact information here. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.